Avatar is a world completely saturated with technologies, older and newfangled. And it is a show that is a distinctly 19th century show. The world in which Avatar takes place is roughly analogous to the 19th century in our world, and like our 19th century, it is fundamentally a time of disruption and upheaval, where the old certainties of the day are gone, where continuity and cohesion are lost, and instead what remains is constant change and flux. A feeling of disorientation and impermanence, with massive transformations in the way people live their lives, the way people interact with each other and with the world itself. And a large percentage of that is technological change, which is very prevalent in Avatar: The Last Airbender. That disruption might not be as apparent as the obvious disruption of warfare, of this long, grueling imperialist war that the Fire Nation wages on the rest of the world, but the two are innately interrelated in a lot of ways. The Fire Nation was able to succeed and tip the balance between the four nations distinctly in their favor because of their status as the first great industrial country in this world. There are a number of reasons for that, just like there are a number of reasons for why it happens in, say, Britain, in our world. Part of that is simply natural resources. Britain had quite a bit of coal close to the surface. Fire Nation seems to have done similarly. But also, Britain was more centralized and more organized as a state. It was a state that already had a functioning commercial economy that led to the need for the development of these industrial technologies in order to fuel that commodity economy. The Fire Nation certainly is relatively centralized compared to the other nations in the Avatar world, as opposed to the Water Tribe, which is mostly ice and snow on both north and south, where there are a few big cities and a lot of polar land, or the incredibly populous and diverse but disorganized Earth Kingdom. The Fire Nation is orderly. It prioritizes precision, measurements, accuracy, and this increasingly centralized system of authority that is far more efficient and practical. But as interestingly is technology used against the Fire Nation, because the Fire Nation does not have a monopoly on technology, and the show certainly is not suggesting that technology is innately bad and we should not incorporate modern technologies simply because they were pioneered by this powerful industrial imperialist state. And indeed, one of the beacons for technology being used in a good and inspiring way is Sokka. I also want to be clear what technology is and isn't in the Avatar world before we go on too much. People say bending is a kind of science or technology, and I do see where they're coming from, but I don't think it's really treated that way in the show. And Sokka certainly doesn't treat it that way. It's certainly not random. It's not just pure spells and incantations. There is an art to it. It is the art in martial arts. But nonetheless, it is deeply committed to spirituality, to a kind of mysticism, to these long and deeply held cultural traditions in these four nations. That is different from something like modern science, which is invented by rationality and contemplating the actual measurable empirical world in which one lives. Technology is also transferable between classes, between nations. It does not belong to a specific group of people in the same way that firebending belongs to the Fire Nation in a way. Not simply just because firebenders live in the Fire Nation, but also because something like firebending is very much interwoven in the mythology and mysticism and spirituality of the Fire Nation. And when that's disrupted, as the Fire Nation becomes a more imperialist state, that causes a negative consequence in how people relate to firebending. Sokka is different than that. Sokka, our emblem of technology and scientific rationality, is different than that. He views bending as kind of odd. He doesn't dislike it, and he comes to appreciate it significantly more over the course of the series, but it's not what he can do. He is not a particularly spiritual person. He has no deep connection to the spirituality of the Water Tribe, certainly not compared to someone like Katara, and in fact, Sokka constantly dismisses supernatural and fantastical explanations, instead emphasizing the necessity for people to figure out the world around them through reasoning, through empiricism, through testing hypotheses. He is the one who comes up with plans and strategies. He observes the actual world in which he lives and comes up with imaginative plans and schemes in order to deal with that. It's not that Sokka dislikes traditional Water Tribe culture. He doesn't, but he doesn't feel the same degree of connection to it that someone like Katara does. Because that's just not a side of life that is particularly relevant to what he considers important and meaningful. Now, the show, it is necessary to say, does not always favor his perspective. The show does not say, oh, we should all rely on a passion for the future, for change, for technological progress, and just throw tradition, culture, and spirituality to the side. Instead, the show has a kind of polyphony. It has these different perspectives, even among our heroes, regarding these issues. They are people who have their own distinct perspectives on this, even as they want to fight the Fire Nation. Katara and Aang, as a whole, are more spiritual. They're more traditional. They deeply value restoring and revitalizing their cultures, and they're a bit skeptical about the passion for modern technology. Whereas Sokka and Toph are more on the side of being very sharply critical of tradition, of customs and mores, and instead wanting to rely on creation, innovation, new forms of ways of interacting with the world, new plans and ideas, and technological change. This is made even clearer in the comics that came after the events of Avatar: The Last Airbender. North and South, which deals with the complicated issues of rebuilding the Southern Water Tribe, really teases out these discrepancies between Katara, who's more committed to the past and to making things as they were, with Sokka, who is emboldened by the future. It also emphasizes how Aang tend to side with Katara. And even on other comics, such as The Rift, which positions a kind of opposition between Aang and Toph, Aang is more on the side of restoring its culture, restoring faith to how things were, to the old rules and mores and traditions, where Toph is very, very skeptical of simply doing things because that's the way it's done, of tradition for the sake of tradition, or even for the sake of social cohesion. She is very independent, even to a fault, and not particularly on the side of the mystical or spiritual. And all of these are good characters. All of these are kind and caring and moral people who want a better world. They're good friends, but they have these different perspectives. And that's even clear in the show itself. They have different emphases. They have different things that they consider important. What Avatar, I think, is very good at focusing on is that technology changes how people relate to the world. An important question is, what is technology? It's something I don't think people talk about enough. We talk a lot about technology, but what is technology? A computer or phone, what you're watching this video on, is technology. I think we would all agree with that. But again, what is technology? Here's a pen. Is this technology? In a certain sense, yes. Is Pabu, my little friend here, technology? He was certainly produced through technology, through certain technological processes. What is technology, and how does it transform how we interact with the world? These are very complicated questions, but I've always been particularly partial to the ideas of the German philosopher Martin Heidegger on this topic. His essay, Question Concerning Technology, is very insightful, if a bit opaque at times. He discusses technology as being a fundamentally mediating force that transforms our experience with the world in which we live. A hammer is a kind of technology. Heidegger uses hammers quite often throughout his work as examples. We have a rock that we're trying to crack if we're like cavemen, and it's difficult. There is a certain relation to the rock that we initially find ourselves within. And then we get ourselves a hammer. We make a hammer, and suddenly our relation to that rock changes. It's something that can be broken. It's something that can be shaped to our will. It allows us to better shape and instrumentalize the environment. And so technology is a kind of transforming force. It's a kind of mediating force. This is not a bad thing for Heidegger. He's not saying, we should have gone without inventing hammers. This is what happens when you take a broader view of what technology even is. But it does mean that there are negative consequences. When we have a hammer, we don't really think of it as something that transforms our experience of the world. We simply take it for granted. We instrumentalize it. It is a tool. It is an instrument that exists for a purpose. That is the primary characteristic of our interaction with that hammer. And so we do not necessarily think of how it affects the world in which we live. Our awareness is lost. If you are riding on a horse, that is a form of technology. The horse, of course, was there beforehand, but horseback riding is a form of technology. It is something that fundamentally changes our interaction with the world. And the horse in that scenario becomes not primarily this individual being, but a way for us to interact with the world, a way for us to see more things, to go further, to go faster. Again, nothing wrong with that, but when the horse becomes an instrument, when it becomes a form of technology, something else is lost, and we are increasingly instrumentalizing both the horse and the world in which we live. This is significantly more the case when we have something like the steam engine, which is not alive like the horse. It is further instrumentalized. It is further depersonalized. It's also increasingly instrumentalized because we do not know, most of us do not know how something like a steam engine works. Maybe on a basic abstract way, but we could not build one or really necessarily understand one if we were there. We were given the task of doing so. So our interaction with that engine is simply one of instrumentalization. It is simply something that we encounter in the world as a character of a tool. And as we go through the world, it allows us to further extend our control over our natural environment and further shape that environment to fit our ideals, our whims, our desires. This is the basic essence of Heidegger's idea of technology. To put it very, very simply in the words of something I think I saw on the internet once, technology is not bad or good, but it's also not neutral. It is something that fundamentally changes us as we use it, as we interact with the world. And this is something that the show is quite ambivalent about. Aang, in the Northern Air Temple episode, is upset at how it has changed so much. He is upset at how this haven of continuity has become polluted in his mind by the influence of this modern technology. And the show suggests Aang is maybe a bit too dogmatically attached to the past and is not as willing as he could be to really think that other people can use that for their own desires and their own needs. Whereas Sokka is very excited about all the new technology and how it gives people power to do things that they otherwise could not do, to make achievements that otherwise would have been only available to benders. Normal people can fly through the air now. Isn't that great? Sokka thinks so, even though Aang is a bit more skeptical and views how they fly through the air as being merely mechanistic and instrumentalized and not really having the spirit of a true airbender. So, the show is really interested in technology. It's really interested in how technology transforms how we interact with the world. Sokka invents all these new things. He invents submarines. Most notably, he helps perfect these hot air balloon inventions. He is fundamentally shaping how Team Avatar interacts with the world and how the world changes. And this is both exciting and a little terrifying, as technological change often is. The show is very interested in these ideas. So thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can. You want to see more videos like this before anyone else. Thank you all for watching. Keep watching Avatar. Great show. Adios, comrades.